Book 1. Discipleship in Deuteronomy.
Chapter 2. The Leading of the Eagle. Recall the idea which these studies seek to follow, that in the book of Deuteronomy there are words of Moses which are so fundamental they have a perpetual relevance to the people of God. That because Moses spoke on the basis of eternal principles, the application is ageless and timeless. What was true then is true now. The passage we are to ponder is this: As an eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings, so the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. Deuteronomy 32, verses 11 and 12. The first thing to remark is this: that Moses was not only a great prophet, he was also a great poet. It is a strange and wonderful thing that the man who could not speak to Pharaoh because of his stumbling speech could describe the faithfulness of God and the unfaithfulness of his people in such telling and thrilling sentences. Great poetry. The Song of Moses, which, as it turned out, was the swan song of Moses, is pure poetry. We ought not to miss the point. It is divinely wonderful poetry. I know there are some in our community who despise poetry because they say it is unreal and sentimental. But the truth is that often poetry gets to the heart of a matter in a telling and penetrating way, when the use of plain and prosaic language would fail, or at least would not illuminate the issues so clearly. For example, you could say truthfully of the Messiah that he will provide for and protect his people. But how does Isaiah say it? He is like a covert from the tempest, as rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. 32, verse 2. Those words have given new hope to all such as are tempest-tossed, parched, and heavy laden. They are profound words, and they have a profound effect upon all who trust them. Again, it could be said truly of God's people that they will be strengthened and renewed. But how does Isaiah say it? They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. 40, verse 31. Those words are poetry, and they stir the emotions. And when the emotions are stirred, the will is energized. The first way of saying it is true, but it is cold and without emotion. It is the language of the accountant, reading his balance sheet. A man came to me once and said that when he reads his balance sheet, it is a very emotional affair, but we must leave that. The issue is that Isaiah's poetry touches us in our deepest heart. I knew a man in Christ who for 20 years lay paralyzed. You can imagine with what hopefulness his soul brooded upon the great words of Isaiah and pondered his rhetorical method. To begin with, the most wonderful thing, mounting up with eagle's wings, and finishing with the most ordinary thing, walking. For that paralyzed man, walking would be like mounting up as an eagle. Isaiah's rhetorical method has a special purpose which we must leave now, to return to the issue that by poetry, divinely inspired, the truth of God is magnificently revealed. And so it is in Deuteronomy 32, in Moses' song, and in those words setting the way of divine government in a figure of the wilderness, the leading of the eagle. I will say here and now that my knowledge of eagles is limited. They are hard to come upon in North Oxfordshire. Those that I have seen hereabouts are stuffed and mounted in glass cabinets. They have not had anything to eat for 40 years. Watching them tells you very little. Most of what I have learned has come from reading, and it agrees with Moses' way of describing their activities. God leading his people. Notice the words carefully in verses 11 and 12 already quoted. Verse 11 reveals to us the activities of the eagles, but it does not tell us the purpose of the activities. We learn that from verse 12 and the purpose of God. We have to allow the first part of the declaration to be interpreted by the second. Here is a strange thing. The purpose of the eagles is revealed in the declaration about the purpose of God. The eagle is stirring up the nest, hovering over the young. The eagle is spreading abroad his wings, catching them and bearing them on his pinions. Why is the eagle acting thus? In order that he may lead the eaglets, so that they may be taught and guided. It is evident when you take both verses together that the ways of the Lord, with his people, are revealed by what is said concerning the eagles. How does God lead his people? He stirs up the nest. He hovers over his own. He spreads his wings before them. He catches them and carries them. This is a revelation of the way of God with his people. I understand that eaglets have a voracious appetite, and when they have been fed, they desire sleep. I'm not going to suggest that sleep after feeding is something peculiar to eagles. Without being zoological, there are other species with the same habit. But it is a fact that disturbance is the last thing that eaglets want, and it is the very thing upon which the parent eagles insist. The young birds are turned out of the nest. They are compelled to strive for elevation. When they drop, they are caught by the father eagle as they flutter and fall. So they are borne on the pinions of the father bird. The mother bird disturbs and hovers. The father bird swoops and catches the young as they falter. So let us remark in the poetry of this declaration on the method of God leading his people. First of all, disturbance, as the eagle stirreth up her nest. Then assurance that love will protect the disturbed ones as they falter, fluttereth over her young. Then the call that those who are disturbed shall find their real purpose, that they might be taught to fly. He spreadeth forth his wings, RV. And finally, that in the process of adventure with the parent birds, there is absolute safety. He took them, he bare them on his pinions, RV. The leading of the eagle, and here are the providential elements of God governing his people. Let us retrace our steps and ponder in the light of the poetic revelation. Let us obey the suggestiveness of the illustration. First of all, disturbance. I bring you to Deuteronomy 1 verse 6. Moses says, "The Lord our God spake unto us in Horeb, saying, Ye have dwelt long enough in this mount." The mountain was Sinai. They had been there for over a year and were settling down to the privileges of the new covenant. It was the place of protection and blessing. They were content to stay and enjoy the peace and stability of the new life. Then suddenly the command came to strike their tents and be on the move. Ye have dwelt long enough in this mount. The reason? They will never possess the land except they turn and face the wilderness. So Israel went towards the wilderness, that untrodden territory that always lies between the place of the vision and the good land. When God speaks, there is no room for dispute or deferment. The omnipotent Lord holds no conference. The providential care of Yahweh offers no explanation. Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. He does not ask if it is convenient. The call may come when circumstances are inauspicious, but come it does. We can be sure of one thing, though. It does not come arbitrarily. God never disturbs merely for the sake of causing a disturbance. Every movement is with purpose. Every change is fraught with love. There would be no progress if there were no stirring up of the nest. God is more concerned for his people's progress than for their comfort. Say what you will, this is God's method. He breaks in upon us in unexpected ways, perchance at unwelcome times, and leads by unknown paths. So God broke in upon Abram in Ur, on Jacob in the house of Laban, on Moses in Horeb. As heaven willed, men who trusted God moved and wrought. In every true life there is the same witness. God leads his people like an eagle. In the midst of the leading, it may not be so evident, and yet tomorrow brings the explanation of the past, and the next day we find the key to solve the mystery of today. Men without faith are blind to the unseen power that directs our lives. Unbelief judges by fragments. Men of faith take the long view and see the providential care of God disturbing, provoking, and bearing his people forward. Who is it that settles a man's habitation and calling? Why did we leave where we were? Who brought us to where we are? There may be no light beyond the next step, and yet there is assurance that the untrodden way will lead us where we ought to be. Sinai may be good, but Canaan is better. Our plans are broken down. Our highest motives have to be reconsidered. Our service is diverted and changed. Our strength is turned into weakness, so that we may know the truth about our will and our willfulness. The warmth and comfort of the nest is one thing, but God does not keep his people in cotton wool all the time. He takes away the props so that they may stand firm and have salt in themselves. Come back to the figure. Watch the young eaglets as they struggle in the air, twisting and falling. Suddenly the peace and safety of the nest is gone. They are perplexed, as an eagle stirreth up her nest. But mark the next step. It seems as though they will be lost, when suddenly the eagle swoops, as swift as lightning, and catches them on its broad wings. The children are borne back on the mother's wings to the ledge and to the safety of the nest. It will happen again tomorrow and the next day, and as the process advances, so the eaglets gain assurance. One day they will not struggle. One day they will spread their wings and mount up with the parent bird towards the sun. If the eaglet was left undisturbed in the security of the nest, the latent powers which are divinely natural to the eagle would never be fulfilled. The law of the eagle would never be obeyed. So with advancing assurance, the young become what their Creator intended they should be. When a man comes to realize that in the disturbance of God there is progress, he will be assured. Bit by bit, there is the certainty that by this method the powers of life are being developed. Step by step, the process enables a man to discover how he may use the forces which are for him divinely natural. God bearing such an one on his pinions in the hour of weakness and perplexity. With humble but increasing confidence, the soul is at rest and the spirit is at peace. Piety on crutches is no good. Life in leading strings is not the same as following the leading of God. Circumstantial goodness is not the same as righteousness. In the end, religion is personal. One man's faith is not enough for two. Any man can be true whilst the sun shines and all is comfort and joy. Of necessity, our discipleship calls for independence, courage, and sacrifice. We are not here to mold ourselves to this world, but to master it. So the man of God must learn to face the tempest, prepared to be buffeted by storms, ready to mount upward and get above the forces which otherwise would bring them to doom. As the eagle stirs up the nest, and will not permit the young to fall into lethargy and sleep when they are full and satisfied, so the Lord disturbs his loved ones, contradicts their cherished plans, exposes them to forces which develop their character, puts strength into their spiritual powers, turns weakness into strength at last. As the eagle fulfills the law of the eagle, which God has placed upon it, so men fulfill the law of manhood, once perfectly revealed in the man of Nazareth, and now enjoined upon all those who have taken his name and seek to follow his discipline. Apart from him, all life is exposed. Apart from him, it is hard and cold and dry. As Isaiah told it, he is the refuge, the river, and the rock. God's eagle methods are exercised to make us like him and to become to others what he is to us. Of course, men of unbelief have never been able to understand how God could so disturb those whom he is supposed to love. If God was really governing your life, would he allow you to be so disturbed? Or would he separate you from such a sacred relationship? Or would he terminate such a successful venture? But men of faith understand this. More than once they have read this, strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Hebrews 11 verse 13, 1 Peter 2 verse 11. They know that those who follow the leading of the eagle are sojourners in tents, ready to strike camp and move onward. And in the moving forward there is assurance. Each experience brings a deeper conviction that somehow they are moving on the eagle wings of God, that somehow they are enwrapped in the great motherhood of God. Are you shocked because I said motherhood? Did you notice the change of pronoun in Deuteronomy? As an eagle stirreth up her nest, that fluttereth over her young, and then he spread abroad his wings, he took them, he bare them on pinions. R.V. Do you remember this in Isaiah 66 verse 13? As one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you, and ye shall be comforted in Jerusalem. The motherhood of God and the fatherhood of God are merged into the leading of the eagle. And such as are God-governed in this way in their discipleship learn to venture with God in faith. By God bear them, as a man doth bear his son, who went before you in the way, to seek you out a place to pitch your tents in. Deuteronomy 1, verses 31 to 33, RV. If we have understood that rightly, it means that the pitching of the tent at night is not accidental, that in some way God has been before us. In some sense, he has inspected the terrain and has appointed the place of rest. According to Moses, God bears his people as a man does his son, with infinite patience and tender compassion, accommodating his strength to their weakness, waiting for them in their slowness, halting for them in their perplexity. Looking for the Lord. What is the effect of this God-governed life upon a man of faith? A man conscious of the leading of the eagle? Well, as it appears to me, he becomes a man who is undisturbed because he is always ready to be disturbed. There is a counterpart to this in the New Testament. I bring you to the words of Jesus. Let your loins be girded about, and your lights burning, and ye yourselves like unto men that wait for their Lord, when he will return from the wedding, that when he cometh and knocketh, they may open unto him immediately. Luke 12, verse 35 and 36. Wait for their Lord. Hear the verse in the RV. And be yourselves like unto men looking for their Lord. To me, that is better than waiting. Waiting seems to have about it a sense of quiescent inactivity. But about looking, there is a sense of serene eagerness, a situation where there is no need, if disturbance should come, for a sudden and hasty scraping together of a welcome for the returning Lord. Rather, a serene and thankful opening of the door, with a quality of immediateness, because every day they were ready to be disturbed. Every day they were ready for the knock, and every day the welcome was prepared and renewed. It means that when life is lived on this level, where men are looking for their Lord in this spirit, then finality on any level is never reached. A man can never say, I am satisfied, life is realized. A man can never say, I will now rest here under this juniper tree till I die. The only hour of satisfaction and finality for such a man is the hour when the Lord is come, and the man has looked into his Lord's face and has been changed into his likeness. It means that all hopes and all intentions and all ambitions must be made subservient to the one great hope and the one great ambition. It means that every intention shall be unrealized if the disturbance which halts the realization is some new venture with the Lord, or that glad hour when his Lord has come. It is a recognition that every other goal will be lost and cancelled for the sake of following the eagle and at last crossing into Canaan. Therefore, my brethren, ideally, and I am obliged to stress ideally, it is a life in which all fear is checked, and every tremor is hushed to rest. In such a God-governed life, panic is outlawed. It illuminates every hour of sorrow. It soothes every agony. It lights with glory every dark cloud. In the day of frightfulness, the heart is fixed. Fear may assault, but it cannot master. Sorrow may invade, but it cannot destroy. A man may rise in the morning and read his newspaper, and know that the things which are temporal are being shaken. He will go out to his duty, and is not afraid, because he believes that somehow he is preceded by the God of the universe. In some mysterious way he is being borne upon the wings of the eagle. It is therefore a life dependent upon the unseen, a life that waits calmly for the disturbance of God, loins girt, lamps burning, ready for the commanding word, ye have dwelt long enough in this mountain, or the final shout and the trumpet of God. This must affect a man's discipleship. It will result in a sincere separation to his Lord's will and a glad submission to his law. Will it not give immediateness, a thoroughness to every piece of work? God knows he may disturb me intermediately or finally, and the thing he has commanded me to do may not be done. Therefore let me do it whilst the opportunity is here, redeeming the time, before it is gone, and I be found to have neglected the one thing he has called me to fulfill, and his scrutiny will bring me shame. And it ought to make us patient, patience in our souls, patience with our comrades, patience with God, not going before him, but letting him go before us. Patience does not say, because he is coming, I have no responsibility for the man next door. or for the agony of the world in need of redemption? Patience is haste upon the king's business, led by the eagle, upward and sunward, restful haste, peaceful speed, graceful diligence. This is the ideal conception of the God-governed life. The writer is half ashamed to tell you that too often the ideal is lost and the goal is abandoned, and the clear shining of the eagle way is left unfollowed. One last word. It may be your experience to have heard the disturbing call of God. I do not know. It may be. Perhaps you tarried when you ought to have moved forward. Consequently, perhaps you have had a long, weary wilderness instead. But now it could be that once again you are on the margin of the good land. May I urge upon you one thought from this meditation. All your wilderness experience has been in the right hand of the Most High. All the disturbance has been under His government. Although you may not realize it, He is restoring the years which the cankerworm hath eaten. He careth for you. His covenant is ordered in all things and sure. Faith will see the true focus, the intricacies of some present problem, the agony of some deep sorrow, the hush of some momentous decision to be taken. With all your bruises and wounds and disappointments, He will bear you on eagle wings until at last you can mount up sunward and be what God intended you to be. God grant that in your deepest heart you may feel it to be true.